Good afternoon. Jimmy Brim, Chief Academic Officer here at Woodford County Schools. What we're doing today is just going to talk very briefly and give just an overview of an instructional framework that we'll use throughout the county and throughout instructions to ensure that we have consistent Tier 1 instruction. Our comprehensive district improvement plan for this year, which you can find a video of on the Curriculum and Instruction website if you want more information about the CDIP, really focuses on strengthening core instruction around what already is tremendous instruction that occurs across our district thanks to the tremendous teachers that we have within our district. As part of continuous improvement, though, we always have to look to continue to strengthen that core to make sure that instruction that students get every day in the classroom improves endlessly so that we can continue to allow our students to reach what is an incredible potential here in Woodford County. So what we're going to move through is just an overview of a gradual release of responsibility framework of core instruction. Now, I want to say on the front end, nothing revolutionary about a gradual release of responsibility, and it's certainly not new. But what it serves to do is provide us as educators a common vocabulary and a common structure for our students around learning. So I'm going to put my face down here and pop up a short presentation that we're going to work through. So this instructional framework is built around the book Better Learning Through Structured Teaching. So it's a framework established by Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry. Any quality educational system is built around multi-tiered systems of support, starting with the Tier 1 services, Tier 2 services, and Tier 3 services. We're living in Tier 1 when we talk about instructional framework. Tier 1 is what all of our students get. Every single student gets Tier 1 services. So an instructional framework is about the lesson structure that all students get. When you look at a tiered model of services, quality core instruction has 75 to 85% of your students achieving proficient or grade level standards with just Tier 1 instruction. When we reach that threshold, we are able to intervene with the other 25% or so. If we're not reaching 75% of our students with core instruction, then we can never intervene out of that. There's just too many students. So again, when we're talking today, we're talking about that core instruction. And though an instructional model largely is on the academic side, it belongs, I want to just emphasize that it belongs on both academic and behavior, right? What we do in our classrooms every day and making sure that we have a structure for learning impacts the academic and behavioral systems within our classroom. That line in the middle that breaks that pyramid really should be dashed, if not, maybe not there at all, as they continuously blend into each other. So within Tier 1, or all tiers, it has to be high quality research-based instruction and intervention. That's what a multi-tiered system of support is. At all three tiers, including Tier 1, we have research-supported instruction in our classroom. When we look at the PLC model, which we've talked about, and hopefully at your schools you've moved through, instructional framework belongs here in that second question, where the teacher creates lesson plans to meet lesson objectives. An instructional framework is not intended to take away any autonomy, but it's intended to provide a structure for those lessons that are planned within the classroom. So a framework is an established and consistent structure of something, a set of ideas or facts that provides support for something or some goal. In our case, the goal is student learning. Intentional is an action performed with an awareness, done deliberately, consciously, or on purpose, and targeted, aimed or directed at something, set as a goal to be achieved. So quality Tier 1 instruction has a framework, it's intentional, and it's targeted. It's fit. So the reason for a framework. So if we go back and I'm going to just briefly go over this. Why do we need a consistent framework for student learning? What our brain needs when it learns is our brain needs safety. In order for our brain to learn, it has to feel safe. If it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't learn. The best your brain can do is remember something for the moment, but it cannot retain that information if it doesn't feel relaxed and safe in the environment. So what we're trying to create for students is that underlined word there, relaxed alertness. We also know that our brain, in order to process information, while it has to be relaxed, it loves novelty. It loves something new. So what a framework allows us to do is to create solid lessons that are new each day within a set structure. So the brains of students feel safe in our classroom because they know how lessons go. They know how teaching and learning goes from the time they're in kindergarten to the time they're in AP calculus. They know the structure that is learning. But we change within that structure to give them something novel. So the gradual release of responsibility, the instructional framework for Tier 1 instruction in Woodford County, follows a very simple gradual release model that we all have seen before. Again, I said at the beginning, there is nothing novel about this. This is what we've known for years is teaching and learning. The only piece that could be novel to you is that collaborative piece. So I do it, we do it, you do it alone. I do, we do, you do, has long been in a gradual release of responsibility. But we intentionally add in the collaborative block, the you do it together, and we're going to talk about that. But this framework is what we know it takes for students to learn. Now, let me say on the front end, and I have a slide to emphasize this in a moment, quality Tier 1 instruction does not necessarily follow this order. It doesn't always start with focus and always end in independent. But for learning to take place, we know we have to have a point in which it's shown how to do something. You have a chance to do it with support. We have a chance to do it with others. And then learning is when we're able to do something independently. We know bad examples of frameworks in classrooms where we have the I do it and then my students do it alone. We have worse classrooms where students just do it alone. We know that's an ineffective Tier 1 structure. And then we have what we call the good enough classroom, where that's the I do it, we do it, you do it model, but it misses that collaborative piece. What we're aiming for is that our students in Woodford County Schools consistently have a model of learning that is I do it, we do it, you do it together, you do it alone. Put in a different form so that it doesn't look so linear, because learning is not linear, is this graphic here, which shows that it moves back and forth between those models. It moves from modeling to guided to productive group work. It can move around. It doesn't have to start in one way. If I'm I taught science, so in science, a lot of times we intentionally plan lessons in which the collaborative piece is the first piece. Students come in and they're inquiring and they're discovering it their own. But in those lessons, I still finish my instruction with modeling the perfect way to do it. I still allow my students to see what an expert thinker does within that process. That's that focus lesson. That's the modeling. That's the I do it. So when did this become the good enough classroom? Again, we're going to go back to brain research and why we include collaborative learning within our framework. What we know about the human brain, especially over the last 10 to 15 years, is that social interaction for our brain is critical to retention, that our brains are much more engaged during social interaction than when listening, reading, or writing. So students retain information at a much higher percentage when they have the opportunity to process it with somebody else. A few brain images here. Here's a brain after sitting quietly, and a brain after a walk. So just the physical movement of a person makes our brain fire at a much higher rate. Here are some PET scans from Rita Carter's work regarding the colored part is what our brain is doing in different activities, from reading to decoding to encoding. And then the one on the blue, this is what happens to our brains when we have to explain something to a partner. It fires in many more locations. In a brain that fires together, wires together. That's why retention goes up, because our brains start doing that. That's why we have to include collaborative learning in our gradual release of responsibility framework. Another example here from the National Laboratories in Maine is the learning pyramid and retention rates, with just lecture, to reading, to audiovisual, to demonstration, to discussion, time to practice, and then to teach others. So hopefully we see here, we're not saying that we just live and teach others. We have to visit all of these levels to make sure that we have the highest retention possible. We're going to do some lecture, and we're going to do demonstration, and we're going to do discussion and guided practice, and practice doing and guided practice. But the highest retention is in that collaborative practice, when students have to explain thinking to others. And I love this graphic to even more emphasize the importance of collaborative learning within our framework of instruction, where Einstein's quote, "I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots." We certainly don't think any of our kids are idiots. We are definitely blessed to have some absolutely fabulous kids, but we know that social interaction is a part of learning. And Albert Einstein told us years ago how important that social interaction is a part of learning. So our instructional framework, focused lesson, the I do it part. I model thinking, I'm the expert, I'm the teacher. Guided instruction, I support students through it. Collaborative, I allow them to work on it together. To independent learning, where they practice that skill in a novel way and they do it alone. One thing I want to point out is writing as a focus area for our district is that a lot of times we follow a gradual release of responsibility in our classrooms until we get to writing. And then all of a sudden we kind of lose our brains and we start doing something completely different. Writing is the same way, right? When we teach writing, we still follow the gradual release of responsibility. I still have to show them that skill. I still have to be the expert. Again, that doesn't have to be the first part of my writing lesson, but at some point in my writing lesson, the expert has to show it. So again, there's the framework in the circular patterns. I do it, we do it together, you do it alone. The collaborative block has one of the toughest pieces to do in the classroom, and that is definitely recognized. And the Kagan trainings that have been made available, that many of you have already participated in, are really the best training around effective collaborative learning. Because collaborative learning isn't just group work. It's structured learning to ensure that students have individual accountability, equal opportunities to participate. We have lots of interaction between kids. So we are going to continue to offer Kagan trainings throughout the district and really encourage and hoping to find a way that we can ensure that all of our teachers have at least day one of Kagan cooperative learning. Is we really have to make sure that we don't forget in the gradual release of responsibility that you do it together piece, that collaborative piece. Without that, we are not getting the maximum retention out of our students, and we're not reaching the full potential of our students in our instruction. So again, the goal of this framework is to provide us a vocabulary, if nothing else, around effective instruction. That a focused lesson is where I do it. Guided instruction is where we do it. Collaborative learning is where our students do it together. And independent learning is where they take that learning and apply it independently and show you what they know. To explain those blocks a little further, there's another short YouTube video I'd like everyone to watch where Douglas Fisher, who actually talks to it, and he does a much more in-depth job. It's succinct. I think the video is only about 13 minutes, but he does a much better job than I can really do justice. So instead of me trying to do justice to that framework, I would much rather us just let the much higher expert than Jimmy Brim speak about that framework. So we're going to, after you've watched this, this will provide everyone an overview and that common vocabulary of quality core instruction. We are going to offer additional trainings around the framework. So if you're someone who this interests or someone who just feels a little unsure still about it, we will have additional layers of support for that, much like the multi-tiered support system for all of instruction that we should be offering our kids. From tier 2, just a longer overview of the framework, to a full in-depth look at the framework and each model and really digging in to what a focus lesson should have in it, and what guided instruction should have in it, and what collaborative learning should have in it, and what independent learning should have in it. But you'll see from Douglas Fisher, as he does a great job at really applying what we've spoken of here and just basically going over it and something that you can put into place into your classroom so that we can take what's already great instruction and make it consistent for our kids. So again, we have brain-friendly classrooms where students can truly reach their amazing potential that we have here with great students in Woodford County, and then we match that with the incredible teachers we have in Woodford County, and we absolutely, without a doubt, can reach Mr. Hawkins' ultimate goal at being a top 5 district in our state.